Good afternoon. Today is April 2nd, 2018. It is about 5 minutes to 6 p.m. in the evening. This is the Streets and Sidewalks Committee, and to my right is Councilman Brock Heath, and to my left is Councilman Bill Lutz, and I am Bob Phillips, the chairman. And here today we're going to talk about bidding authorization for a 2018 paving program for the city of Troy. And Mr. Titterington or Mrs. Rhodes, who's going to lead this?
I can lead that off, and Mrs. Rhodes, as always, is available for the more technical questions. We are recommending and are asking you to authorize advertising for bid for $832,000 for our annual road paving program. $800,000 of that is for is to repave sections of 19 roads, $800,000. Additionally, in the budget, and that was included and is included in the 2018 budget under the Capital Improvement Fund. Park Department, the Senior Citizens Center parking lot is another item that is part of this request, and then a section of the internal road structure in the cemetery known as Central Avenue. We're asking for that to be authorized as well. By doing that, we believe that we will get more competitive bids, or at least a more competitive bid. As I mentioned, 19 road sections is listed in your packet. Approximately 8.7 lane miles would be touched with this program, in addition to the cemetery and the park projects. A word just to call out in the memo to you, the staff did go through and rate every foot of roads. We've broken it down into approximately 400 street sections. They're not consistent. Every one is not a quarter of a mile or 1,000 feet, whatever. It varies. There's logic to it, but it varies by road. So each section was rated based on 15 different criteria: raveling, bleeding, patching, disintegration, et cetera, et cetera. This past season, those were rated, prioritized, sorted out against an acceptable rating of 75 on a 100 scale. Anything below 75 is of imminent concern. That is not a standard rating, because there are other factors that come in. It is a standard rating, but it wasn't an exact science, only because we highlighted several sections of roads where we're trying to coordinate with other major projects, such as the Vectron relining work, so we may have moved it up or back a year. The bottom line is that when we looked at the next 5 years, the average cost to repave the amount that needs to be repaved is, I believe, a little under $800,000, which tells us that we're within the tolerance. And so $800,000 appropriation allows us to keep up with, and in maybe some of those years where we don't necessarily need to spend $800,000, we can get a little ahead. Like any year, when we ask for an authorization of $800,000, we will bid those out. We'll bid those 19 road sections out, and with any luck, we'll get competitive bids and have some money, and we can add maybe a 20th section, or we can do something a little bit more. It just varies. When the contractor gets in and starts digging up the road, they may find some base that is disintegrated that needs some extra work, or we may have some extra money to do a little bit more. That remains to be seen with the bids that come back once we're authorized. We are not requesting emergency legislation. I will say that this comprehensive rating, we plan to do this. We've tried to do it every 5 years. We're going to try to do it every 3 to 5 years. It is a very labor-intensive exercise. As we look next year at the next group, we will go out and reanalyze those sections to see if they are still the worst or if there's some others, you know, depending on the freeze thaw and the weather cycle that's hit in that preceding year.
When we do the inspection of these, do we have to physically inspect them, or can we use an aerial?
Now, you really can't use an aerial. The aerials are not updated that frequently. It's not a cheap process. So going out, physically driving and walking each section of road, that's why we'll do this every 3 to 5 years, because again, it is labor intensive.
And this is outside of just patching of normal potholes that we run
Correct.
across.
We still have our crack sealing program. We still have our hot patch, our cold patch in the off seasons, pothole filling, et cetera.
And generally, those are the employees that are spotting these and/or complaints or concerns that we get in from the public or others that report a pothole in a specific,
yes, absolutely.
specific area.
Yes.
And the paving itself, is this a variety of different methods, from slurry seal to 1-inch top coats, or what? Or is this we're not going down to foundation or to solid bedrock and rebuilding? This is an overlayment?
It really varies by section. You know, it just depends on what the rating has shown and what kind of work needs to be done in that particular road in that section.
Okay, thank you. Any other further questions from one of the gentlemen?
Yeah, just kind of a general, so that I understand, what's the lowest road that was rated? I mean, how far down are these getting? Did we have a 10 somewhere, or is
No,
it
we didn't have a 10. We had a 6, yeah, I was going to say a 60.
60?
Was the worst. And it was, I think there were only 2 or 3 sections that were below 65, if I remember correctly.
Okay. So it seems like in general they're doing fairly well. I mean, just
Yeah,
normal
they're
wear and
holding
tear.
up well. And
Yeah.
cosmetically, they may not look as good. And,
Right.
you know, we do get, yeah, people can, you mentioned potholes. We do get complaints, calls, emails from folks. There is a complaint line. There's also a complaint portal that they can go to.
Right.
And social media is always fairly instantaneous about letting us know feedback on the roads.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm just curious if all the streets that had a score of 75 or less are on this list.
No, I don't believe that's
So there's
true.
some
And
other-
again, yes, and so, you know, 75 is not an absolute that you have to do it. 75 just means we got to do it in this year, next year.
Okay.
As I mentioned earlier, though, there may be, you know, some 75s that, because they're doing veteran work this year, we'll push to next year.
Okay. In the second question, it might be helpful to help explain what are the source of funds for Fund 441, or...
441 are typically general funds.
Okay.
There may be some grant funds. We do earmark the permissive tax money that we collect. That goes to the road repaving. You know, in some years, there may be some park and recreation capital funds. I don't believe that's true this year, but that can happen as well.
Okay. So when we go to the BMV and we pay our extra fee, we can be assured that those dollars are going to projects like this?
Yes,
Okay.
that's why we did it. We said that we were going to use it towards road repaving, and so we collect it in the general fund. There's a specific line item that it's collected in, and then it goes to the capital improvement fund.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council folks have any questions? Oops. Madam President?
Yes, please. Is the complete list available either on the website, or that we could get a copy of it? Council members could get a
Yeah,
copy
we
of it?
can get you a copy
or-
of it. It shouldn't be
is
an
it
issue.
electronic?
It's it's electronic, but we'll have to pare it down. It's a very, very involved. I don't know that anybody would understand it if we put it on the web.
Okay.
But certainly anybody who had a question about their particular road, we'd be glad to walk them through the rating, since we have rating sheets for every section. But if council would like a copy of, I don't know if we have a summary sheet or what, but we can work on something, sure.
Well, I don't want it to be too labor intense to do that. I just thought maybe, you know, if we could see which streets were in the 75 percentile or whatever, you know, whatever the rating was, or perhaps what year that it was targeted to repave certain streets, then, you know, we would have a better idea of what. So I didn't know if there was anything,
We'll have to do some sorting and.
if you
paring
tacked
down.
on a year on any of it or not.
Since we have 400
Okay.
lines and what,
400
A through Z
columns.
columns, yeah, but we'll work on something. Yeah.
You guys will understand it perfectly. We'll just send it right your way. There's just a lot of gibberish, so.
Any other questions?
Well,
I have a question.
highly technical calculations.
Highly technical calculations.
A lot of decimal points involved. Mrs. Oda, you had a question?
Patrick, are we limited to the number of roads we can do by the manpower it takes or by the dollars that it takes?
Well, since it's contracted out, I mean, it's bid out, it's not a manpower issue. I mean, $800,000. We've gone probably in the last 8 years from, what, 400,000 to 500 to 6, then up to $800,000. And that's why this year we said, okay, is 800,000 enough? Are we keeping up with our roads? And that's why we did the comprehensive scoring, and that's why we sorted it to see how our streets compared and whether or not we were, you know, the amount that we needed was maintaining our roads at a 75% or better.
So I guess my question, do we set a limit and then say how many roads can we get done for that amount of money? Or do we say, this is how many miles we're gonna do, how much is that gonna cost?
It's really a combination of both.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
How do
we have,
we-
you know, we have a ballpark that we know. We have the list that we think we're going to do and need to do. But again, at the beginning of the season, before we come to you every year, we do take that list of streets and go out and see, you know, if they've deteriorated more or less, and if we can accommodate, in this case, the 19 roads, or maybe 20 or 18, and now where do they score, and are we going to keep up? If you may recall, I think you were on council, and it wasn't too many years ago, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, we even increased it to $1 million on a one-time basis. So, you know, and over the next 5 years, we're estimating that the annual average cost is going to be a little less than $800,000. I want to say 732 is the number that sticks in my mind, my recollection. We don't have any intention, of course, every budget stands on its own, but we have no intention of backing down to the 730. If 800,000 is what we have plugged into the pro forma for the 5-year plan. And so the idea would be in a year that we don't need to spend 800,000 because we have enough that score higher, we'd still take the next lowest scores and do those roads to be a little ahead of the game.
I'm just wondering. Thank you.
I got another question.
Go ahead.
How long have we been doing this methodology of ranking the
Oh,
streets?
for a long time.
Long time. I'm just curious, I mean, are we seeing the scores increase? I mean, if we took an average score of a section.
No, I don't think so,
Okay.
because, you know, even during the recessionary years, as other communities were cutting back, you know, we have continued to maintain a solid amount and even increased it over the years, past few years.
Okay.
And the fact that that other communities in other counties, well, even in this county, had been relying on permissive taxes for a lot longer than we were. So when we were instituting it, we were able to earmark it, and that allowed us to bump up a couple of $100,000 immediately.
I wasn't clear on my question. I guess I was asking about kind of like, do we have like an average score of streets in town? And have we seen that number go up over the last few years? Or are we seeing that we're making progress?
Oh.
Are we seeing the condition of streets improve?
We're at least maintaining, if
Okay.
not going up. I mean, our amount of lane miles continues to go up.
Yeah.
So it's hard to compare apples to apples.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, those newer roads, they're going to score extremely high, so that might artificially bump the average up, which you don't,
Yeah.
kind of garbage in, garbage out. So I hesitate to say, but I do know that we are maintaining.
Okay.
And we've added some equipment that has allowed us to do a better job of filling potholes. We've increased our crack sealing program as well, which is probably one of the most, if you don't have it, it's one of the best investments that you can make, because it helps keep out the water and maintain the integrity of of the base.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Rhodes, how many street names do we have? Do you know that number?
I don't know.
We have 4.
North, south, east, and west?
East and
Yeah,
west,
Market
and
Street?
north, south, and west, east.
North Market, South Market, East Market, West Market.
How many-
I don't know
how
off the
many?
top of my head.
That'll be in that long comprehensive list.
There'll be a trivia question in the next Troy
Yeah.
Main Street trivia night.
Come on, Bobby, give me a softball right here. Give me a good, I can give you a good answer about this paving program. You
We're
want to
in,
see what
we're in
policy
baseball
is?
season, so it's only hardball questions.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions on this topic?
Just a question. With the North Market and with the West Main Street, when those projects, in the process of them happening, heavy equipment has to get in and get out. Do those side or auxiliary streets, are they weighed, or do you plan ahead for the abuse they're going to take in a repaving, resealing kind of program?
We're going to do a couple of things like we do with any project. Number one, if we have side streets that are in the same schedule range, we'll try to schedule those concurrently, so that we're not putting new side roads in and then risking damage to them, particularly at the intersections. Number one. Number two, we will, as we always do with our bidding, we do have some strict standards for the contractors and the equipment and where they can drive that equipment. We want to keep them off the residential streets as much as possible for a variety of reasons, including tearing up the roads.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. What is your pleasure with this item?
Let's move forward.
Yep, agreed.
All right, it's a unanimous decision of the committee to move forward with the project as recommended by staff. Any other items to come before the Streets and Sidewalks Committee?
No, sir.
Then we are